Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Craving Shaving. This is not an actual shaving video. What I want to do today is explain how you set a knot into a shaving brush. As many of you will know, I make shaving brushes, and I get that question a lot on my Etsy page because I do sell I do sell, handles only, and so people want to set their own knots, and they say, how do I do that? What do you use? So I thought I'd just make a video that I can refer to people to. So if you're coming from my Etsy page, welcome, and hope this helps. So here's the things that I use. Okay, you're going to want some 2-part epoxy. This is the kind that I use. I'm sure that there are other types that you can use. Some people will say that you need to use marine epoxy. I don't think that's the case. I think marine epoxy is so that it can set up underwater. This doesn't need to set up underwater. It will be plenty set up by the time you need it. So that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so you need that. You need, of course, something to put the epoxy in, and it is 2 parts. So you'll need something to stir it with. Popsicle sticks work great for that. They're fairly cheap at any Walmart or craft store. You find them in the craft section though. I also have quite a few pennies that you heard me drop a minute ago. We'll show you why we use those, as well as some other things you might not think of, like modeling paint. I use that in setting knots sometimes. So let me readjust the camera and we'll get into it. Just a second. Okay, so this is going to be upside down probably, but that shouldn't matter. So first of all, of course, you want the knot that you're going to be setting, and you're going to want the brush handle that you're going to be setting it in. Okay. Now, generally what I do is I drill the hole quite deep that the knot goes in. And so you don't necessarily want to jam it all the way down to the bottom, because if you jam it all the way down to the bottom, it might be set too deep, and there might be too much backbone. Or something like that. So really what you want to do is you want to find where you want the knot at. Now, if you're familiar with the knot, that's going to help. This is actually a knot that I'm not familiar with. It's one that I got from my knot supplier that I'm testing, and so I figured it would be a good one to do this video for. So I'm not exactly sure how this is going to go, because I've never used this knot before, but we're going to go for it, okay? To adjust the height of the knot, the loft, you're going to add some pennies, okay? And it's best to do a dry run. Throw some pennies in, pop the knot in there, and that looks pretty good to me. I think that's about where I want it. A good thing to do too, if you're not sure what the loft should be, go ahead and ask the person who you got the knot from what a good loft is. Maybe tell them, how you like your brush, if you like it with lots of backbone or not a lot of backbone. For instance, if you are going to use a really soft knot, like one of these, Plissoft style, really, really soft knots, you're going to want to set that pretty deep, because you're going to want it to be set down low so it has a little bit of kind of added backbone from that. If you're using one like this supervisor knot, I got these thinking they were kind of a floppy boss knot, and they are not. They are very, very stiff synthetic knots. And so if you were sitting this, you would want it just barely sitting in there. You wouldn't want to push it down at all, because it's already got a ton of backbone. If you shove it down in there, it's going to have way too much. So you want it just really just barely sitting like that. So you're going to want to kind of get to know your knot a little bit. This one, I think, will do well with 2 pennies. And you can obviously, get a ruler out and measure. I don't do that, but that doesn't mean it's not probably a really good idea to do that. So, okay. So let's go ahead. Again, this is the epoxy that I use. Hopefully hold that the right way. You want to get equal amounts. Okay, so what I do is I always keep a second cup standing by, because sometimes one side likes to come out faster than the other. That went fairly well. Better to have too much than too little. So you have pretty near equal parts there. Then it doesn't give instructions on how long to mix for or anything like that. I generally just do it until it's combined. So that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to take everything out. Now the trick, I learned this very early on making brushes, is you definitely don't want that to drizzle all over your brush handle, right? So if you get it and roll it on the mixing device, whatever you happen to be using, it should fix that. Put a little dollop down at the bottom. Take your penny, or you can use washers, anything really. Just pennies are cheaper than washers. It doesn't hurt the pennies at all. I could, you know, bust open any of these and get the pennies back out. So if you're worried about defacing currency, that shouldn't be an issue there. Again, you want to definitely make sure you don't get any of that epoxy on your... Okay, so there you see there's epoxy around the edge of that penny. Not really any empty space. Now what I'm going to do is, the trick here is you don't want, okay, you do not want too much epoxy, and you don't want it going up too far because it will squish out the top, and you just don't want that, probably. Okay, so there's two tricks to that. One, don't add too much resin, and two, don't push down super hard when you're setting the knot in. Okay, gently push and twist. Check to make sure it is level, which I believe it is. Looks good to me. And then the next step, set it down so it's level and wait for it to harden. And there you have it. This stuff that I am using sets in, I think, about, well, it's right here, let's check. It says sets in 5 to 8 minutes, which sounds about right. But I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't use the brush for 24 hours. So if you're going to set a brush, I wouldn't recommend using it until it's been able to set up for 24 hours. If you're using this epoxy, just check the epoxy. It'll tell you what to use. Also, if you're wanting to set a knot and you think you may want to remove it, I have not done this personally, but I've heard that silicone, just you can get in one, like a caulking gun, or just silicone glue, works well for that, and it's pretty easy to get the knot out afterwards. I've heard that from a lot of reliable sources, so that's another option to use. This stuff, it will come out if you steam it and get it really hot, and then you can usually yank it out, but that possibly could damage both the brush and the knot. I've never had that happen, but I've, again, heard of other people having some damage to the brush using that method. So bear that in mind. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments, and I can either address them in another video or respond to you in the comments or in email or something like that. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Oh, I didn't mention, this will be a little thing at the end. Some of you are probably, what about the hobby paint? What's going on with the hobby paint? So here is a brush that I received actually from another artisan. I will link his Etsy page down in the description of the video. But he made this brush and sent it to me, this brush knot. And there were some issues, the top had cracked, and he was just fed up with it. It's Scott Rollins. His Etsy page is Shaving King's Cave. I'll put a link down in the description. We have a relationship where I've done this to him too, where there's a brush that's just frustrating me, So I just send it off to him. He fixes it and does what he wants with it. He sent me this, and as you can see, it's clear resin, and in the top it was see-through, and I didn't like that effect. You know, you put the brush knot in and you can see all the bottom of the knot and stuff. I didn't like that, so you get some hobby paint of whichever color you would like. You can paint the inside of it and get a nice effect that way. That way you can't see all the workings inside the brush. So I have, you know, several different colors, and I'll use those from time to time as well if they're see-through. So those are some tips for you. Hope that helped. I think that is it. Again, if there is something else, leave it in the comments below. Thank you so much for tuning to this episode of Craving Shaving, and hope you have a wonderful day.